Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Pioneer is finally here on Arena. They've gotten rid of Explorer. Explorer is no longer. We are here with Pioneer. We're pretty much on par with Paper in terms of all the playable cards. And today we're going to be looking at the best decks that you can take to Pioneer Best of 3 on MTG Arena. We're going to be looking Diamond and Mythic rank with the data we get from Untapped GG, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client. Aggregates user win rates, gives us a whole bunch of cool stats. If you want to use Untapped to track your games played or see some stats, link is in the video description. I will also paste and timestamp all these deck lists as well. So you can find that. You can find my Untapped profile, see what I'm playing there, all the details there, ways to support the channel, all that. So we're going to look Diamond and Mythic rank, and right now, pretty much Mono Red is the most popular deck. We got Izzet Phoenix, and then it's pretty wide open in terms of the other decks. You'll have like black-based mid-range decks, your Fable decks kind of thing. There's an uptick in a mono white token control deck, and then various kind of combo-esque decks along with, you know, just the Azorius control deck always kind of hangs around. So we will jump into it. Diamond and Mythic rank, and we have 6,200 games played in the last week. Mono Red Aggro is the highest win rate deck, 80% over 20 games. And if you have a standard deck, you have a Pioneer deck. So very easy to kind of port this over. Usually the numbers vary between Bone Crusher Giants and Tursas. This version's 2 Tursas main, 1 Bone Crusher. Sometimes you'll see 2 and 1, you'll see 3, 0. So it's really dependent on what the rest of the metagame is looking like. It's your mouse package in here. Is very strong. Sometimes you'll have Hired Claw in here as well, so there's some flexibility in there. Sunspine Links tends to be very good in this format because a lot of decks are fairly greedy with their mana bases, and this shuts off life gain, really useful there. The Lightning Strike, just kind of a little bit more scalable removal for a lot of the threats in the format. Your full Screaming Nemesis kind of booty in there as well. So then we have Mutavault in here. So this is a really interesting line. We see sometimes the creature line from Standard be played, but it's a lot more expensive. This one here will allow you to basically make it a mouse for 1 mana. It works with Rockface Village. It works with Manifold Mouse, so a lot of synergies there with the deck. Sideboard, Grafdigger's Cage for anything that's cheating into play, Collected Company decks, as well as like Phoenix, you can kind of hit them. There's also Magebane Lizard, which you may want to consider. We're seeing that get increased play in Standard, sometimes even in the main board. The recent RC winner had 3 copies in the main with Corey Steelcutter decks. It's really good. Red Cat Melee as for the Mirror, Torch Tower, cheap removal, Forge for the grindier matchups, and Witchstalker Frenzy as some big removal. We have Angels. So naturally, you're trying to fight the axis of Mono Red with a deck that gains you a bunch of life. So this deck here is looking to use 6 accelerants, and then that would take you into either an early Collected Company or Kayla's Reconstruction. Both let you put creatures into play at an increased rate. But the big cards are Bishop of Wings and Righteous Valkyrie, both allowing you to gain big chunks of life and have utility. The big payoff for gaining life, obviously, is Righteous Valkyrie, which is a lord, as well as Resplendent Angel, which will, if you gain 5 or more life for the turn, you get an angel, and they kind of stack in that regard. This version is playing 1 fewer Jada, 1 fewer Inspiring Overseer, in place playing a couple Enduring Innocence for some card advantage. A lot of your creatures come in small. If they're bigger because of Righteous Valkyrie, you're probably well ahead anyways, so not really the worst case scenario. Skyclave Apparition is the removal in the deck. Sideboard, Deafening Silence for basically your Phoenix decks, Lotus decks, anything that's storming off. Portable Holes, cheap removal, Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, Arcan of Miriam for storm decks, and Settle the Wreckage in the creature mirrors. You know, they think you're holding up Collected Company, but you actually spam Settle and their hopes and dreams are destroyed. Rakdos Demons. So this deck here is basically your next evolution of the Fable Rakdos decks. They keep banning stuff, but you know what? They keep sticking around. So full set of Unholy Annex in here, very strong card. You can turn it on as early as turn 3 with Blade of Oni, which is also a demon, some Shieldreds on the top end, and then just a lot of good value plays. You have 6 pieces of Hand Hate in the main, bunch cheap removal between Fatal Push, Torch the Tower, and Go for the Throat. Blood Tithe Harvester Fable from Standard days, very strong removal, repeatable effect. You have Fear of Missing Out for kind of looting effects, Kroxa for value. Urborg in the mana base cleans up your mana, and then you also see Mutavault being played here because it works really nicely with Unholy Annex, treating it as a demon. In your sideboard, you have Invoke Despair for the mid-rangey matchups, just kind of go over the top. Extinction Event, if you do run into the rare mono green against some creature decks against Angels, you see Angels deck, most of their curve is at 3, so it's a really strong card there. Hitazuku Consumes All for any of the low to the ground decks, your cat decks, some of the mono red decks. Blot Out for big things, Licensed Graveyard Hate, Anoint with Affliction in here for just kind of catch-all removal, Cheap Torch, and the rest for hand hate. We have Abzan Greasefang. So we have Mardu. The Abzan version is the highest win rate of the Greasefang decks. So this deck here, the core of it is putting cards into your graveyard. Cash Grab mills you over. You have Witherbloom Command that mills you over. Rafine's Informant draws discards. Honest Rustine in here is a cool one. Lets you rebuy cards, kind of lower their cost. You're playing these 3-drop creatures in part because you have Yathin, Road Watcher, 4 mana, 3/3, enters, mills 4. You could return target creature 3 mana or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's another way to kind of get back your Greasefangs. Full set of Overlords in here to mill you over as well. Core of the deck, get Greasefang into play Eska's Chariot, then you get back either Eska's Chariot, Sky Sovereign, or Parhelion. Parhelion's a big hit. Some of the decks were playing Boomwagon or the 6 mana green, black, blows up something on ETB. That's something you might want to consider as well. Leyline of the Void, Graveyard Hate that doesn't hit your own graveyard, Temporary Lockdown for the aggressive decks, Vanishing Verse for monocolor hate, Terra Sunder for most of the hate pieces, Dampening Sphere for Lotus, Phoenix, stuff like that. Containment Priest, anything that's getting cheated into play. Now, notably with Containment Priest, this does impact you as well. It is a universal effect. So if you Yathin your Greasefang back in play, it will get exiled. Fatal Push as cheap interaction. Interesting to see no Fatal Push main, instead just going like heavier into the combo. Mono White Devotion, Mono White tokens. So this is a deck that's been popping up more, 70%. So it's built around United Battlefront, and this gets you a bunch of value-added 3-drops. So Caretaker's Talent from Standard, you have Restoration of Aganjo, lets you kind of loot for lands, and then is a nice threat on the back half. Wedding Announcement triggers both the effect to make a bunch of tokens, which triggers Caretaker's Talent, which is an anthem for your team. Works really nice, obviously, with Elspeth. Birth Maladies, so just a bunch of ways to kind of find lands in your deck that then have additional utility. Authority of the Console's main, Portable Hole, Builder's Talent, it lets you kind of put counters, build things up really big. Ossification is removal, Carrot Cake as a way to kind of gain some life, and then Ruined Halo can kind of neutralize. So say against Phoenix, you name art like Phoenix, you kind of take them off a lot of damage that's coming out of their deck in that sense. Pearly Snare is removal, you can hit off it. So a bunch of strong effects there. You have Castle Ardenvale, Fountain Port, just a bunch of ways to kind of take advantage of your mana base as well. You could generate a bunch of devotion, pay into these effects here. Yorion Companion, Surge of Salvation, protect you against red and black decks. Heliod's Intervention deals with artifacts or enchantments. Can also just be a nice big life gain effect. High Noon versus Storm decks, Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, and the Voice of Victory for kind of the control matchups. Lets you play around counter spells, and it's a reasonable threat to kind of put the pressure on them. Mono Black Demons, or Mono Black Midrange, so very similar in concept to the Rakdos version. You're giving up Fable for a cleaner mana base. Liliana's in here, Trespassers to the Graveyard Hate, tougher to kill, some life gain. Gifted Aetherborn plays better into the aggressive decks, just being the life linker. You have the Unholy Annex, main board, Invoke Despair, so lets you be a little bit bigger of a mid-range deck against the Rakdos one. You do lose it on Fable, which is arguably one of the best cards in the format, however. Gives you access to Castle Lockwain in the mana base, Field of Ruin that you can play in these. Again, Urborg, cleaning up your mana to play more colorless spells. Sideboard, just more invokes for the mid-range matchups, Leyline for the control decks. Kalitas, very strong against the aggressive decks, as well as against like Cat Oven, stuff like that. It can deal with Extinction Event, like we mentioned. Withering Torment deals with enchantments, as well as kind of catch-all removal. Meathook Massacre as a sweeper. Nowhere to Run as cheap removal, and Duress for hand hate. Izzet Phoenix Cutter. So we've basically had the Phoenix deck, which looks to draw a bunch of cards, play a bunch of cheap spells. Pairing that with Corey's Steel Cutter, which now gives you some resiliency, lets you play a game where the graveyard isn't as consequential. You could kind of still draw through your deck, do what you need to do, and then just beat them with prowess tokens, which is strong. With the backup of Arc-like Phoenix. Treasure Cruise lets you refill your hand as well, which has a lot of utility. Basically just a bunch of cheap removal. Seeing Into the Flood Box, see more play across formats. The way to deal with a lot of common hate pieces, deals with big creatures, just really effective card for the rate that it's been given. You have Brotherhood's End, can deal with a lot of hate pieces in terms of artifact hate, but also be a sweeper along with Anger of the Gods. Brazen Boar is a cheap way to bounce various hate pieces. It's another flyer, things to deal with when your opponent brings in a lot of graveyard hate. Thing in the Ice is going to be used against the aggressive decks, lets you reset their board. In his early blocker, they usually won't bring too much big removal. It's going to be like Torch the Towers, stuff like that typically comes in against you. Aether Gust for red-green decks, Braid for hate pieces, cheap removal, Chandra's Defeat for red creatures, and then Annul for dealing with a lot of the enchantment hate that might go around, Rest in Peace, stuff like that. Azorius Lotus Control. So basically blue-white control has two iterations, your Lotus and non-Lotus version. So Lotus Field in here, along with Thespian Stage that can copy it. And what you're doing is either using Strict Proctor, which will fizzle the trigger so you don't have to sacrifice, or you can Discontinuity with the trigger on the stack. So it's basically 2 mana if you do it on your turn. So then you end the turn before the effect resolves. So you kind of save yourself that, get ahead on mana. Once Lotus Field's in play, you get basically tap 1 land, you could stock up. This version's playing Sphinx's Revelation, card that I cast way too much in paper when it was standard legal. Bant Wolf Run was my deck of choice, or then into Esper Control. But we have Farewell in here as top end sweeper, Supreme Verdict, Memory Deluge for card advantage, your Planeswalker package. You're basically winning through like a Wandering Emperor here, taking extra turns, or just Castle Arden Vale eventually nullifying. This one is very light on win conditions, so if they do hit your castle, you can start doing the Teferi Tuck as well, technically as a win condition. Vetoes for kind of the mid-rangey control mirrors, the High Noon for Stormish decks, Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, cheap counters, Mystical Dispute, Sphinx's Rev for the grindier matchups, just refill your hand, Leyline for decks with a lot of discard or targeted burn, more sweepers, and the Thought Distortion for the control mid-range mirrors, just stake all their cards. Cast this through the Lotus Field, since it'll generate black mana. Sultai Lotus Controls is really Simic Lotus with some black cards that only get used once you combo. So another Lotus Field deck, but this one's playing completely different in terms of its style. This one is a combo deck. So you are using Lotus Field here, you're going to get it into play. Not really stifle effects for it, but basically once you get your Lotus into play, you can find it with Sylvan Scrying, find it with Archdruid Charm, then you'll start copying it. And what you're going to do is use things like Pour Over the Pages, Vizier, Tumbling Sands, Hidden Strings to tap and untap it over and over again, generate you a whole bunch of mana. And then once you have that mana, you'll Emergent Ultimatum. You will eventually go like Dark Petition, put it into your hand, and you basically keep churning through just more copies of like Pour Over the Pages, Lier. Lier lets you cast cards from your graveyard, eventually getting enough mana to Fae of Wishes into your sideboard for Approach the Second Sun as your primary win condition. You can also get Zakama that untaps your lands and then lets you kind of storm off there. Sometimes these decks will play Omniscience, which also works as a way to just kind of get free value as you churn through your deck. There is an Izzet version of this deck that's using the red talent that lets you kind of churn through your deck as well, and then uses Wish as the effect there. Sideboard, you have some cheap counters, Lockdown for the aggressive decks, again, castable off of the Lotus Field, full Leyline against heavy discard decks, Farewell is Catch-All Sweeper, also deals with hate pieces, Dragon Lord Dromoka against the aggressive decks, as well as decks that can bring in counters. Similarly, you have Sphinx of the Final Word for the heavy counterspell-based decks. Flood Maws in the main as well can deal with common hate pieces. And then lastly, Jund Sacrifice, so 56% win rate. Basically Rakdos Sacrifice with the Yurga backup combo. You are using just a bunch of ways, Cat Ovens, the talents can allow you to generate extra food. Eventually you mill yourself into a combo, and then Chapter 3 lets you basically bring back Yurga from your graveyard or Mayhem Devil. If you have Yurga in play, a cat in play, and a cat in your graveyard, or 2 cats in your graveyard and a food token, basically your cats become foods themselves, so they can loop themselves, sacrificing each other, and eventually you either drain them out, or you can also mill them out with a talent and just target them. Another Fable deck that helps you dig into kind of the combo pieces. Obnixis for the control, kind of grindier mid-range decks. Go Blank, Hand Hate that exiles their graveyard. Heritage Reclamation deals with basically all the hate pieces. Artifact Hate, Enchantment Hate, and then can also deal with graveyard. Torch is cheap removal. Hand Hate in Thoughtseize and Duress. And then you have Red Cap Melee for the red-based aggro decks. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking. I will probably take mono red to FNM this week if I go. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.